let's share some thoughts on Surah Al-Burooj, which is the 85th surah of the Quran. I'll go through some of it and then I'll share some thoughts. I just wanted to, we'll go over briefly the 16 verses of it. It is in total 22 verses, I believe, but we'll go over just these and then we'll come back to certain nuances of these verses that really shed light and help us and give more meaning to our daily lives. Ameen. Right, so أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسماء ذات البروج واليوم الموعود. And I've put up the translation there as well. That was sama, that Allah is taking an oath by the cosmos. Okay, the cosmos and the constellations that it contains. واليوم الموعود, the promised day, وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ, and by the witness and the one witnessing. And it's interesting that Ibn Juzay al-Gharnati, the great Maliki Spanish scholar, he from over 700 years ago, in his tafsir, he writes that, there were almost up to 32 opinions on what this verse meant. That's amazing. قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ, that destruction to the people of the pits, okay, or of the ditch. النَّارِ ذَاتِ الْوَقُودِ, that this fire that was prepared, إِذْ هُمْ عَلَيْهَا قُعُودٌ, whilst they were sitting on it, وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ, and whilst what they were doing to those of faith, as what were they doing? They were torturing, and we'll just come back to this in just a second. That they themselves were a witness. وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. Now, once again, many ulama, including Ibn Juzay, amongst others, they mention a bunch of opinions on who is being referenced to in these verses. Some people say that it was this king and there's a story. Some people say, no, it's just it's not anybody. It's not about a specific people, as in that's not the point. Allah is just mentioning a people that once tortured some believers. And there's a bunch of opinions, but the story or the narrative is that certain people of faith were tested and punished for their faith. But whilst they were being tested, whilst they were being tortured, put into agony by these people, those people themselves are shuhud. You see, they are a witness to their own actions. And that وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. And sometimes it's a belief. And this is interesting because as we take this away, it comes down to belief is it's something abstract. That these people hated on them to the extent that they tortured them over what? Over just a belief, like something they couldn't see. It was something in the hearts and minds of people. So, الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and to Allah is the dominion of the heavens and the earth. وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. Okay, and Allah is a witness to everything. That I'll just bring up the next verses, then we'll just come back briefly. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَتَنُوا الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَتُوبُوا فَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ جَهَنَّمَ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ الْحَرِيقِ. That these people that tortured and did these things, that tested those of people of faith, that do they think that there's nothing? there's no consequences. No, there is severe consequences. There's severe punishment for them. There's agonizing torment for them as well. That إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ذلك الفوز الكبير. And people of faith, they have an incredible reward. A reward here of jannat, of this, of just bliss, immeasurable, unfathomable bliss. ذلك الفوز الكبير. That is the true success. Then inna batsha rabbika lashadid. Now this is arguably the reply to the qasam that was taken in the beginning. That was sama'i dhatil burooj wal yawmil maw'ud wa shahidin wa mashhud. Inna batsha rabbika lashadid. That the seizing of your Lord, that when he seizes you, it is severe. Innahu huwa yubti'u wa yu'id. See, Allah, he sets things into, he allows them to begin. He's the one who gives them their beginning. Wa yu'id, he can bring it back. Wa huwa al-ghafur al-wadud. He is the most forgiving, most loving. Wadud, Dhul Arsh al-Majid, one of absolute majestic grandeur. See, Allah is fa'alun lima yurid. He does as he wants. Now, this verse, you see, so this, we've got, let me just bring this back. Oh, right. Okay, that's better. So we've had here these verses speaking about, and I'll just take this back as well. Okay, I don't know if I've done that. Okay, yep, I have, yeah. So, Surah Al-Burooj. So, we've got in this surah, it begins with the constellations, going right through these oaths. The initial verses you can see here, just bring it back. There it is. Right, so the first few verses, it begins with وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ, an oath, several things Allah is speaking about. Allah begins by taking our glance to the cosmos. وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ. You see the heavens, that the cosmos that possess all these constellations. And you think, well, one thing is, well, okay, I mean, that's amazing, but what else from these that can we reflect upon? Just looking up at the starry sky is something that fills the human soul with awe. The famous saying of Kant, Immanuel Kant, that the starry sky above, and he said that two of the most increasingly awe-striking things, two things that strike the most awe for any individual. I mean, he was speaking for anyone, but primarily himself. He said is one, the starry sky above, and two, the moral code within. And it's interesting that there's a link, this numinous, you know what Carl Jung mentions, the numinous. There is a link. By seeing the cosmos, we are filled with this awe, which then awakens within us this morality. وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ. You see that the promised day It's amazing because all, you see, one way of, one of the amazing nuances, you see, that you can read this verse is, and that's the, I keep saying this, that's one, the amazing thing about the Quran, that every time you look at it, it gives you an, a nuanced meaning to add meaning to your life. That wal yawmil maw'ud, because on one way is that the day of judgment, people are the afterlife. Sure, that's obviously the, but another way, that another nuance from this, another meaning, is that every promised day, see, we all have in our minds a time that we're this kind of, oh, when this happens, this kind of milestone, or when I do that, or when I graduate, or when I get a job, or when I get married, or when I have kids, when I buy this, when I set up my company, when I get to do this, when I get to do this, there we all carry, there is this archetype of the promised day. And it's amazing because we are all in some, on some kind of, we are all driven towards it, but it's like we never reach it, because when we reach it, it's like it didn't mean what it meant from afar, and now it's another target. وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ. Allah said, look, the witnessing. And many people have said, well, Allah is the witness, the creation is the witness, the star. Some people said Shahid, some people said, there's so many, the Ummah, all these things. But one way to look at it, one of the a beautiful glance at this verse is insan wa shahidin wa mashhud, in the sense that, you see, from the cosmos to us, that we are the witness and the witnessed. That the universe itself, we are a part of the universe. We are specks within this whole universe. I mean, we're a part of it. But the universe gets to observe itself and witness itself through us. It is our consciousness, this gift by which the universe becomes conscious, so to speak, of itself through our consciousness. That it sees itself through our eyes. It hears itself through our ears. It's beautiful that it's a hadith. See, speaking of from there and tying it into ethics, there's a hadith that Allah says that a servant, he does things that are beloved to me, and he keeps doing them until I become the eyes by which he sees, the ears by which he hears. I become the hands by which he reaches. That there is this fusion. Tying the wording of that hadith ties in just so rhythmically with the verse where Allah says, you see, where Allah is saying he becomes these things. He says, where he asks insan that, why is it that I fell ill and you did not visit me? I was hungry and you did not feed me. I was destitute and you did not listen to me. And insan says, Ya Allah, anta Rabbul Alameen. You're the Lord of, how can kaifa, how kaifa ut'imuk? How can I feed you? Allah says, was so and so not hungry? Had you gone to feed him, lawajadtani 'inda. Allah. Had you gone to visit that sick person, had you gone to help that person in need, in difficulty, that hungry person, thirsty person, destitute, you would have found me with them. From one perspective, the hands by which that insan reaches, the glance by which he or she looks and sees, by what they touch and hear, is God, metaphorically, in the Hadith Qudsi. And on the other side, the receiving end, where they are feeding, they are finding God. Allah. And insan is a witness to himself whilst he is witnessing, and he is the witnessed. And through him and her, this whole universe is witnessing life in its brilliance and glory. Wa shahidin wa mashhud. Allah. And when you observe all of that, you realize that yet sometimes people can do some horrible things. People, despite all of that unfathomable glory, they can do some disgusting, they can do some denigrate, they can be so just wrong. And Allah gives the example of some of the worst people ever then. Then how about a people like this that were to torture and agonize and torment? And let's make it worse. What if these people were only doing it over a belief structure? They were doing it over Iman, which is in the hearts and minds of the other people. It's not even a possession. I mean, sure, even animals compete over resources. So you could say, well, they're just being animals. They're just fighting over gold and silver and land and territory and resources. But no, the worst of the worst, you've got here from Ahsanu Taqweem to Asfala Safilin, that these people, ma naqamu minhum illa an yu'minu billahi al-aziz al-hamid. They are torturing the worst of people, doing all this to someone just because they have a belief, they have Iman, they have faith. I mean, it doesn't get any worse. But you know what? Even such people, whilst they that do things like that, are a testament against themselves. And they are actually, there is a damnation for those people. These people who do such atrocities, they don't get away with it. It begins right here. It begins within. It is consuming them. There is a torment. Adhab al-hariq. It is burning them. In this world, it begins from within. And then Allah brings it all back from after that, because you see, if you've got this example, because you've began with the cosmos, you've gone to ethics, you've gone to, well, what about people behaving in such a way? Allah reinforces that, look, if people are to do good, righteous actions, they will always find bliss. And then sealing those verses, وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الْوَدُودُ. See, Allah reminds you that with all, Allah is most forgiving. He's not like humans. He's not like, you see, people, they, even if they forgive, they don't forget. But with Allah, it's like as though, the hadith says, التائب من الذنب كمن لا ذنب له, that a person who realizes some wrong that they have done, When they make amends, sure, if there's to make amends with people, you make amends with people. But where you've done something and you just feel I've just been a wretched person, and you try to make amends with yourself, with God, it's like it never existed. That there's always, the doors of mercy are always open. Ghafur al-Wadud, most loving. And this Wadud, it's that love, that kind of it's the kind of selfless love, often associated with like a mother towards a child. It's not exclusive to, but it's like that, like in the hadith that tazawwajul walud al wadud, marry, when somebody's asking what kind of he's asking the Prophet for some advice. The Prophet says, marry such and such type of woman. He says, marry a woman with this sifa, wadud, that is loving. And it's often associated with that. It's not exclusive. You do get the poem of Mutanabbi, إِذَا نِلْنَا مِنْكَ الْوُدَّ فَالْبَاقِي هَيِّنٌ وَكُلُّ الَّذِي فَوْقَ التُّرَابِ تُرَابُ. You see, if we can achieve love from you, would, فَالْبَاقِي هَيِّنٌ, everything else, it's cool. وَكُلُّ الَّذِي فَوْقَ التُّرَابِ تُرَابُ, and all that is above dust shall just be dust. These verses, I thought, wow, that where Allah is then reminding you of His mercy, but also reminding you of His will. Allah does as He pleases. But in one way, that's a reminder that, hey, don't transgress. But on the other hand, it's a reminder that if things can always change for the better. You have to seek things out in life. And it could be from the tragic to the mundane. We spoke earlier on about people who are stuck in a mundane, and that mundane is an agony. And that they need this to let this kind of adventure of life. They need to step out on it and step out towards it. This is a spectrum. Allah's will is everywhere. He's reminding you, فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. You see, Allah will bring back. See, as the verse before, يُبْدِئُ وَيُعِيدُ. You see, let's say you've tasted happiness before. You've tasted joy. You've tasted contentment. One way of looking at this verse, يُبْدِئُ وَيُعِيدُ. Allah will bring it back again and again. You see, you have to take that step. The famous hadith, Qudsi, that Allah says, when my person steps towards me, I run towards them. See, so when they step towards me, I walk towards. When they walk towards me, I run towards them. That's metaphorically, but it's the Hadith Qudsi. It's for us to take that step. And I see that how these themes are sequenced in this surah. It's just wow. Honestly, it's so amazingly beautiful. Like beginning with just وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ. Just the first few verses are enough to mesmerize you. وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ. And we all have a promised day, don't we? Allah. And sometimes it's amazing how the illusion of that promise that we have, that we set our own promise days, and there's the ultimate promise day. But insan, and not to be misled, insan, on one hand is this crazy little thing, insan, but then washahidin wa mashhud. Allah, I want to share that with you. Honestly, I find so much just grandeur in these verses. Really, it's something. You guys have to study Arabic. Seriously, study Arabic, because it just brings a different flavor. When you read it, it has a different maza, different taste to it. Yeah. It's good stuff. May Allah bless us all. Amen.